So we're reading from Matthew chapter 4. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. "Come, follow me," Jesus said, "and I will send you out to fish for people." At once they left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness among the people. News about him spread all over Syria, and people brought to him all who were ill with various diseases, those suffering severe pain, the demon-possessed, those having seizures, and the paralyzed, and he healed them. Large crowds from Galilee, the Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, and the region across the Jordan followed him. One of the first things that kids learn about at school are shapes. They're quickly taught the difference between circles, squares, triangles, and rectangles. It's kids stuff, right? Easy peasy. So let me ask you this. Are squares also rectangles? Are squares also rectangles? Well, the difference between squares and rectangles aren't as clear as we might think. In fact, every square is also a rectangle. So, what's the difference? Well, a square is a quadrilateral, a four-sided shape where all four angles are right angles and all four sides are the same length. But a rectangle is a quadrilateral where all four angles are right angles. So you see, every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square. Aren't you glad you tuned in today? Well, that small geometry lesson should remind us that sometimes we think we know something that perhaps we don't really know. It's not until we think deeply about two words or concepts that we uncover the real difference. There are lots of examples of this in the Bible. Just one example. What's the difference between a Christian, a word which occurs 3 times in the New Testament, and a disciple, a word which occurs 258 times? Well, Christian is a word with a long history. It's used very sparingly in Scripture, and it appears to have been a derogatory term that others used to describe early Christ followers, literally meaning little Christ or follower of Christ. The term's usage grew with Christianity, of course, throughout the generations. And today, this well-travelled word arrives at us with quite a lot of baggage. It's used in so many different ways, from someone who has some identification with the Christian religion, even culturally, to someone whose whole life is based around the person of Jesus. It can refer to someone who never goes to church or someone who gathers there every week. Christian then began really as a helpful and descriptive word, but today it's perhaps become less helpful because it can mean so many different things. While Christian is the most popular term in our culture to describe a person who follows Jesus, disciple was actually the most popular term by far in the New Testament. But what exactly is a disciple, or perhaps in modern terms, an apprentice? Well, the key question for us, I think, is what did Jesus mean by disciple? How did he use that term? I wonder if sometimes we're more like historians of Jesus than disciples of Jesus. Well, that may have something to do with the way that we do schooling in this country, possibly actually the way schooling's done in many parts of the world. We go to school, we work towards passing a test which gets us to the next round, and then we carry on until we've gone as far as we want to, or until we've gone as far as someone else tells us we can go. And then, in a formal sense at least, education stops. To a large degree, this system is about accumulating knowledge, which of course in itself isn't a bad thing at all. But I have been thinking recently how much the way we often do church is based on that idea of learning. So we turn up to church to accumulate more knowledge about Jesus, about the Bible, and so on. This kind of approach means that yes, we build up knowledge about Jesus. That's why I said we are historians in a sense. But is this what Jesus meant by being a disciple, acquiring knowledge? Well, yes, it is an element of it, but it's not the main thing. When he called and calls today people to follow him, he's meaning something much, much more. Jesus, of course, was a Jew and naturally drew his understanding of being a disciple from that culture, where people would commit themselves to a particular teacher or a rabbi. And it really involved three things for them. 1, following the rabbi. 2, copying the rabbi. And 3, carrying the passion of the rabbi. So in many ways, it's about surrender and it's about influence. Come and follow me, says Jesus. Will you surrender wherever you think your life is going to me? Will you walk my way rather than some other way? And when we say follow his way, I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is this image of Jesus walking ahead, leading the way, and the rest of us perhaps trying desperately to keep up with him. But actually that's not what Jesus did. What he actually did was he gathered a group of people around him and then he walked alongside them through life. In effect, he said, watch how I do it and join in, life on life. Much more like apprenticeship, like a partnership, even a friendship. So that's what I mean by surrender. For my life to go in the direction Jesus is going in, for our lives to go in Jesus' direction. He walks alongside us and we walk alongside each other as we follow him. So part of this is letting Jesus' way of life influence us and our lives. To ask ourselves, what is it that really influences the way that I live my life? Is it the media? Is it a group of friends? Is it a hobby? Is it even rose-coloured memories of an earlier time in our lives and experiences? Here's an uncomfortable truth for every human being. We are all discipled by everything in our lives. We are all influenced by so many different things, by other people, by wider society and culture, by the prevailing ideas around us. They influence us and make us who we are. So the question is, what, or rather who, is going to influence us most? The competing and often crushing expectations of the world, or the love and the passion of Jesus? Are we willing to let him be the primary influence in our lives? So in common with the rabbis of his day, being a disciple or apprentice is about following Jesus. It's about copying him, and it's also about having the same passion as him. You see, Jesus had a unique way of relating to God. He had a unique way of seeing the world and a unique way of seeing people, of loving people. Everything he did was just wrapped up in love and passion for people, always, always desiring their best. Jesus had a passion for the lost, for people who found themselves far from God. He had a passion for the poor, a passion for healing, a passion for restoring people, for lifting up the downtrodden and showing everyone their inherent value as beloved children of God. So do you see how it's about much more than just being a learner, though that is an important aspect. It's about learning to live like Jesus for our own sakes and for the sake of the world. So what can this look like practically for a Christian today? Well, following Jesus isn't just about what we do together as Christians, important though that is. Following Jesus is about how we live our lives in the world, day to day, even perhaps especially in the small things. And we meet together as Christians because that is what Jesus tells us to do. We meet together because there's something so special about truly worshipping God together. There's something so life-giving about it. We meet together to encourage each other, to strengthen each other, maybe sometimes to challenge each other too. This is one of the things lost to a large extent, I think, during the pandemic, that commitment to meeting together. And I suspect it's going to take a while to recover that habit. I also suspect that how we meet might well look different in the future, at least some of the time. But without doubt, meeting together, gathering as Christians, is essential to what it means to follow Jesus. Actually being Christian community, living that out in a large or a smaller group, gives us the firm foundation and the strength to go out there and live as followers of Jesus on our front lines in the real world, because that is where we live out much of our discipleship among family, friends, neighbours, colleagues. Life then is the main event. Gathering as Christians is what enables us to live out that main event day to day. And that follows the same pattern that Jesus set in his life. Yes, he spent time in synagogues and in the temple courts, but much of his life he spent on the road, around dinner tables, on the mountains, where crowds gathered too. And in our daily lives then, it's about asking God, Lord, what does it look like for me to live out the way of Jesus in my life, in this situation, with these people, with Jesus' ethics, with his love, with his passion, and with his compassion. I'm more and more convinced that the community of Soul Friends is a resource which can help us all learn to follow the way of Jesus. And in a month or two, I'd like to share with you some new resources, practical resources, which can help us all live as followers of Jesus in our lives, through ups and downs, through joy and pain in the real world, and for the sake of the world. So, squares and rectangles, Christians and disciples. In the end, I guess it really doesn't matter what we call ourselves, as long as we understand what Jesus meant by someone who follows him. As a church, we are here to support and enable you all to be all that Jesus wants you to be in your lives at this time. Whether you're going through good times or, like some of you are right now, through tough times. Jesus' call is challenging, yes, but I am ever more convinced that it is truly the only way to find life, to find a deep sense of purpose and a peace which is beyond human understanding. Following him is the way to living life close to God and to each other, and it's the way to living lives which make a difference. So let's all choose to keep on learning to follow Jesus, to copy Jesus, and to carry the love and passion of Jesus into the world around us.